Hey, what is up, ladies and gentlemen dudes? Kyle here. Welcome back to the shop, where today we're starting a brand new project. We're going to be building Han's DL-44 blaster out of wood. So before we started the video, I went ahead and had two of our major pieces right here. This is going to be the main body of the pistol itself. It's just going to be the very basic grip. We're going to cut out the trigger hole here where your finger goes through. And then this old piece of rake handle is going to be rifle. That's going to be our two basic parts right there. I just want to cut these out to kind of give you an idea of where we were going with that. So then after I get these, I'm going to get all of these put together. And then we're going to go on to making the rest of the details and the other things that go on Han's blaster. I don't think I have all the parts for it right now. I'm going to get as far as I can tonight. And then probably in the next couple of days, I'll be getting all of the other parts that I need so that we can finish that up. Of course, you guys are all going to see this today, so I've already finished it for y'all. But that's what we're going to be doing today, so let's get started.
So the first thing that I did was I kind of blocked out the basic shapes, what everything needed to go, so that I kind of knew what needed to be done. So then I cut out the trigger guard on the scroll saw over here. I actually did a lot of decent amount of scroll saw work this time. And after that, I just started building up layer by layer. I realized that the pistol itself I didn't cut it big enough originally, so I had to add a little bit of material on the front, which is what those square blocks were for. And then after that, I was just building up the details, the basic shapes of the gun and the body of it to try to figure out where everything was needing to go. Kind of running back and forth from the scroll saw over to my table where I had everything set up. Just looking at reference images pretty constantly. Those are pretty important whenever you're trying to make something that has already been created. Just gluing wood back onto the gun. Make sure you measure everything beforehand rather than just freehanding it. Not necessary, obviously, because I didn't do that, but it can be helpful. Saves a lot of re-gluing later. But it ended up not being an issue overall for the rest of the build. Here I actually discovered that one of the pieces, the square block, was actually slightly thicker than the other piece of wood, so I had to sand that down to get our side pieces to attach properly so they were flat so they could get glued. It was pretty cold that evening, but the sanding quickly warmed me up, so I ditched the jacket. And it ended up just being, I ended up carving with my knife on the inside of the piece I was gluing on rather than trying to sand everything down because it was taking too long, and I'm impatient.
Alrighty, we've got most of the basic shaping for the gun done. We've got the barrel here. I just kind of cut off, kind of rectangularized the inside of it for the part that's going to be actually attaching to the gun, so that I can also have some pieces here to kind of clean this area up a little bit and make it all the same thickness. But so far, it's mostly, as far as the basic shape, is mostly complete. At least everything that I can do tonight with what I have. I don't have, the main things that we're going to have to get parts for is for the scope and for the flash hider on the front. But other than that, we have pretty much all of the main pieces here and then assembled already. This has actually been not too long. It's only been about an hour and a half, maybe an hour. I don't know when I came out here. Hasn't been too long. We're making some pretty quick progress. So what I'm actually going to do now is I'm going to transition over to the Dremel, and we're going to start shaping up the rest of our handle here. So the trigger guard is going to need some dremeling and some shaping. This handle is going to end up being almost completely round when you hold it, so that's going to need a lot of shaping. And then we're going to make the little grill, the ventilation grill that's on the front of this. It's going to be kind of rounded on the sides, kind of like this, with lots of little grooves in it, so I'm going to be doing that with the Dremel. And then we're going to go over it with some sandpaper just to kind of clean it up. And we'll see where we are from there.
So after this, I transitioned over to the Dremel and started doing some of the rough shaping. I actually had to add a couple more pieces into the grill because I realized that it stuck up on the sides a little bit, where the ventilation grill ended, and I didn't catch that previously. And in order for me to have made that shape without gluing any more wood on, I would have ended up having to carve away the vast majority of the square blocks that we put on earlier. And I didn't really want to do that because it would thin out the front of the gun a little bit too much for my liking. So after I got that in the basic shape that I wanted, I went on to getting the handle dremeled out a little bit more. I hadn't ever done quite this much dremeling on a project before, so it was definitely a lot of fun. Got to do quite a bit of practice with the Dremel tool and get much more familiar with it, to the point that I was making much faster progress than I had previously ever done with the Dremel. Then I went on to just sandpaper everything, just kind of clean up the Dremel lines as much as possible, with just a rough 80 grit sandpaper for getting everything pretty much generally the right size, shape, and smoothness.
I want to try to make the entire thing out of wood, so I want to see what I can glue and cut up together to make approximately what it looks like. I'm not going too much for super realism here, so far here's what we've got. Right now we've got this little bit on the bottom where the magazine of the actual gun this was built out of would have gone. Then this right here is the little cooling vent on the front, and then we've got the handle nice and round here with these lines cut into it. All of this will be sanded and painted so it'll look nice when we're finished. I have one more piece that's going to go on the back. It's going to be another thing like this, a little loop. We'll have to clean this up a little bit. And then what I'm going to do after I have all of those pieces done and made, I'm also gonna have to make the flash hider, and the scope will be at the very end. But after I have everything other than those two things put together, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through all of these cracks right here with wood filler and then sand them smooth so it all is kind of one coherent piece.
So after that, what I decided to do for the scope, because I wasn't smart enough to go out and buy some dowel rods, is actually take some square pieces of wood that I had and take them down with a planer to a pretty close approximation of a circle. Hadn't ever done that before, and I was gonna try it and see how it worked, and it worked pretty well. One of the things that I was quite pleased with was getting this 2x2 into a pretty decent circle. This was much better. I did show you a little bit, but because of the way the time-lapse worked, you didn't actually get to see more than like a frame and a half of that. But then after I dremeled this circle down into a cone shape, I kind of dremeled out a hole, and then I dremeled out the scope itself into kind of a peg formation so I could just get that in there, and ended up gluing it together. Super glue ended up not holding later, so I ended up actually using wood glue for that. Now we're going to move on to the flash hider, again doing the same thing like what we did with the scope, where the eyepiece for the scope, just kind of circled it, made a circle out of a 2x2 because again I didn't buy dowel rods, and then we did a ton of carving. This took me probably 45 minutes to an hour and a half, I'm not sure exactly how long it was, but it ended up being really happy. I'm actually really pleased with how this came out. There was a lot of stuff that I wasn't sure if it was going to turn out properly, but it ended up being alright. We got it sanded, and we got a bunch of details dremeled in as well that I was quite pleased with. Here we're doing the same thing with like what we did with the scope in order to get the flash hider onto the muzzle of the gun. Here that was just cutting out some pieces that we were going to use for the scope, the housing and connector bits that are going to go on the side of the gun, the mounting bits rather, that would actually connect to the gun. You can kind of see how it was going on there. Lots of super glue. Super glue is amazing. Dries really quick and lets you keep working almost instantly. I was pretty pleased with how tight we were able to get the scope attached inside without having any wood filler in there or anything. Of course, I did go over it later with wood filler just to make it a little bit nicer. And I cleaned up the entire thing with a sanding bit on the Dremel tool. And obviously lots and lots of wood filler. Fill in all those cracks, make sure it was all one piece.
Alrighty, I now have both of the main pieces ready and in their final shape. We've got the gun here. This is the actual body of it. This hasn't changed too much, except that I have wood filler in here, and I sanded that just to make it nicer and to smooth out most of the lines. And then this is the scope, got that completed, and that'll go on the side. The only other things that I have to do are I need to make the trigger, that'll go right in here, and then I need to make some circles for the bolts that'll be here, and then a couple others on the side. And then, after that, we will have completed our Han Solo blaster. So what I'm actually going to do is, these are actually going to be painted separately to each other. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a black base coat on these. And then we're going to let that dry, and then we're going to get all the final details in, paint that up, do another coat of black paint on all of that, and then we'll be able to start painting it to actually look like what it's supposed to look like. So, I threw the scope on the ground. But we're getting pretty close. Alrighty, I got everything painted and attached, and this is what we ended up with. I'm actually really pleased with how it turned out so far. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but just from using all the stuff that I actually had on me and kind of not having any plans or directions or anything like that or dimensions for the thing, I'm pretty pleased with it. The last thing that I did was glue on the trigger, so that's not, I'm not putting a lot of weight on it because I'm not sure if it's all the way dry yet. But other than that, this thing is completely dry and ready for paint. So after looking at the gun, that paint job on it is going to be actually really easy because the only thing everything's black except for the flash hider and the handle. So we're going to go ahead and paint those. The flash hider I'm going to do with some silver spray paint. So I'm going to mask this off with some painter's tape and some paper. Go ahead and paint that whole thing silver. Then this is just going to be brown acrylic paint over this. And then that's pretty much it until we get to weathering and stuff like that. Yeah, so we're almost done. We're about 8 hours into the build so far, including drying times and whatnot. If I had just been working straight, it probably would have taken about 8 hours. So overall, not too bad for a day and a half of working so far. Pretty pleased. Alright, so it's been just a moment. This has mostly dried. Yeah, it's dry. So this is dry. We're going to go ahead and take off all of our protective paper. And it's looking pretty nice. There we go. So now we got that off. So this is nice and black still. And we got this nice and metallic silver. And that's one thing that I like doing whenever I'm doing metallic paint. Especially like silver spray paint, is get a black base coat on it. It makes it look really nice. And all of the black inside the holes really make those pop really well. So I'm pleased with that. Quite pleased with that indeed. Alright, now onto the acrylics.
So after that, I was going to start out with the handle, just kind of do a basic brown over the whole thing, just to kind of give it the idea that it's, whether it's wood or synthetic, doesn't really matter, it's brown. And it just grips on the side, so I didn't paint the entire thing, just painted the sides of it, where you could kind of see the lines where the wood connected to the handle. And it turned out pretty alright, pretty basic. After this, it was mostly just dry brushing with silver acrylic paint. But basically what dry brushing is you take a brush and you dip it full of paint and then brush most of it off.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, here it is. We're done with Han Solo's blaster, the DL-44. I'm really pleased with it. It's made entirely out of wood that I just had lying around the shop, and I turned it into this. It was a lot of fun. It was about 8 hours worth of work total for the full thing, with drying times and all that included. So yeah, I'm really happy with how it turned out. I didn't think it would turn out this well. I know there's a lot of problems with it, there's a lot of flaws and things that aren't perfect, a lot of details that are I just simply didn't do. But you can't make it perfect the first time, so next one will be better. Next one will be better, but for the first attempt and for what I had on hand, I was really happy with it. This muzzle, this flash hider is what really was probably my favorite part of the whole build. I took this out of a piece of 2x2. You saw me, actually I think I recorded that. Anyway, you saw me turn it into a cylinder and then carve all of this out of it. I did not think that was gonna work. And then once I had the shape, the profile shape of it, I was like, that looks really good. I really want the front to be hollowed out though. I didn't think I was gonna be able to do that. I didn't think I was gonna be able to get these holes in it, but I was able to, so that just made it so much cooler. So I'm really excited for this. I'm really excited to do some more projects like this in the future. So if you guys want to see that, make sure you subscribe and let me know what you guys think I should make next. I don't know if I'll listen to you, but if you say something cool and it's like, yeah, let's make that, then we can try to make that. I got a couple other videos coming out soon. Streaming is on Thursdays at 8. I'll be streaming on Twitch. I stream a bunch of different games and whatnot. I do have a Minecraft video I'm building. I'm doing a building time lapse. I've never done one of those before. So I had to figure out how to get 2 Minecrafts running on my computer at once. But so far I'm really happy with how that's coming out. I'm not sure when that's going to be out, when I'm going to be finished with that, but you can stay tuned for that. And I will see you in the next video. Bye. Call, you're helpless. You're helpless.